Have you ever wondered if the Quran, the holy book of Islam, is complete and self-sufficient? This question has been the subject of many debates and discussions among scholars and followers of Islam. The Quran, revered as the direct word of Allah, is seen as the ultimate guide for Muslims worldwide. However, there's a common belief among some that the Quran alone is not enough for a comprehensive understanding of Islam. They argue that the hadiths, are the sayings or actions of the Prophet Muhammad, are essential for explaining and interpreting the Quran. Here's a brief introduction to hadiths for those unfamiliar. Hadiths are traditions that document the Prophet Muhammad's words, actions, and approvals. They're considered by many as second to the Quran in terms of religious authority. They serve as a practical guide, providing Muslims with detailed instructions on various aspects of life. But here's where it gets interesting. While some Muslims see hadiths as indispensable, others question their authenticity and necessity. They argue that the hadiths are not direct revelations from Allah, but are based on hearsay and memories of people, which can be flawed. Now, imagine this scenario. What if the Quran, the holy book that Muslims believe to be the word of Allah, declares its own completeness? What if it claims to be fully equipped to guide its followers, without the need for any additional sources? This is not a mere hypothetical situation, it is a reality that we will explore in the upcoming scenes. We will delve into the verses in the Quran that assert its completeness. We will also examine the reliability of hadiths and their role in understanding Islam. This exploration is not to undermine the importance or relevance of hadiths, but to question the common belief of their necessity for interpreting the Quran. We aim to stimulate thought, encourage questioning, and facilitate a better understanding of the Quran and its message. But what if the Quran asserts its own completeness? Let's find out. The Quran makes its claim of completeness quite clear in Surah Al-An'am, verse 112. This verse, nestled within the heart of the Quran, proclaims a profound message. Let's delve into it and extract the wisdom it has to offer. Surah Al-An'am, verse 112 reads, "And thus we have made for every prophet an enemy, devils from mankind and jinn, inspiring to one another decorative speech and delusion. But if your Lord had willed, they would not have done it. So leave them and that which they invent." This verse is a potent statement, a declaration of the divine design where every prophet is met with opposition. But the crux of this verse, for our discussion, lies in the latter part. So leave them and that which they invent. This statement communicates a powerful message about the Quran's completeness and self-sufficiency. The phrase, "that which they invent," is often interpreted as referring to external sources, stories, or interpretations which are not part of the Quran, such as hadiths. The verse is essentially saying, leave those extraneous sources behind. This can be seen as a clear indication of the Quran's completeness and its negation of the need for external sources. The context of this verse also sheds light on this interpretation. The verse is located within a surah that discusses the trials and tribulations faced by various prophets. Here, the Quran is essentially telling its readers that they should focus on the divine revelations within its pages and not be distracted by external narratives or hearsay. In essence, verse 6, 112 of Surah Al-An'am is a testament to the Quran's completeness. It emphasizes the Quran's status as a standalone guide for spiritual and moral life, negating the need for auxiliary sources like hadiths. It's a verse that calls for focus on the Quran itself, a book that is complete in all its facets. This verse is a clear indication of the Quran's completeness, but there are more. There are other verses in the Quran that further assert its completeness. Let's delve into some of these verses, beginning with Surah Al-Nahl, verse 89. This verse translates to, "And we have sent down to you the book as clarification for all things, and as guidance and mercy and good tidings for the Muslims." Here, the Quran is described as a clarification for all things, suggesting its comprehensive nature. It is a guide, a mercy, and good news to those who believe. This verse, in essence, underscores the Quran's completeness by declaring it as a source of universal guidance. Moving on, we have Surah Al-An'am, verse 38. It reads, "There is not an animal that lives on the earth, nor a being that flies on its wings, but forms part of communities like you. We have neglected nothing in the book." In this verse, the Quran states that it has left nothing out, asserting its completeness once again. The verse also emphasizes the unity and interconnectedness of all creatures, underlining the universality of the Quran's message. Next, Surah Al-Kahf, verse 109 states, "Say, If the sea were ink for writing the words of my Lord, the sea would be exhausted before the words of my Lord were exhausted, even if we brought the like of it as a supplement. This verse foregrounds the endless wisdom and knowledge of Allah, as represented in the Quran. The verse implies that the Quran contains an unfathomable depth of wisdom and knowledge, thus reiterating its completeness. Lastly, we should mention Surah Al-An'am, verse 112, which states, "And so we have appointed for every prophet enemies, devils among mankind and jinns, who inspire one another with adorned speech as a delusion. If your Lord had so willed, they would not have done it, so leave them with their fabrications." This verse, while not directly speaking to the completeness of the Quran, warns against false stories and fabrications, potentially including those found in unverified hadiths. These verses, in their own unique ways, all echo a common theme: the Quran's completeness. They portray the Quran as a comprehensive guide, a book that covers all aspects of life and a source of endless wisdom. They emphasize that the Quran, in its divine wisdom, is complete and requires no additions. Moreover, these verses also highlight the Quran's universal applicability. Whether it's discussing the unity of all creatures or its role as a guide and mercy for believers, the Quran presents itself as a book for all of humanity, transcending time and space. These verses unequivocally express the Quran's completeness and self-sufficiency. Now that we've established the Quran's completeness, what about the hadiths, you might ask? Well, let's delve into this topic. Hadiths are the sayings, actions, and approvals of Prophet Muhammad. As reported by his companions, they claim they're considered an important source of Islamic law and moral guidance. It can never be compared to the Quran, or explain it, because it is full of contradictions and unreal stories. But unlike the Quran, which Muslims believe to be the direct word of God, hadiths are inherently a form of hearsay. They were orally transmitted over generations before being compiled into collections 200 years after the Prophet's death. This time gap and the oral tradition naturally raise questions about authenticity and reliability. Because the Umayyad were not illiterate, and they were an empire, why did they not write it at those times? Or maybe they forbid such books to be written. It's possible because hadiths books were written after the Umayyad and Abbasid empires had fallen. But despite the efforts of scholars, it's challenging to verify every single hadith. There exist categories ranging from sahih, or authentic, to da'if, or weak, and even maudu, or fabricated. This categorization itself speaks volumes about the challenges in authenticating them. The Prophet's sole mission was to deliver Quran, the whole Quran, and nothing but Quran. 320, delivering the Quran was such a momentous and noble mission that the Prophet did not have any time to do anything else. Moreover, the Prophet was enjoined in the strongest words from issuing any religious teachings besides the Quran, 69:38-47. He was even enjoined from explaining the Quran, 75:15-19. God is the only teacher of the Quran, 55:1-2, and the Quran is the best hadith, 39:23 and 45:6. These Quranic facts are manifested in the historical reality that the words and actions, hadith and sunnah, attributed to the Prophet did not appear until the 2nd century after his death. The Quran has prophesied the fabrication of hadith and sunnah by the Prophet's enemies, 6:112-115. The Quran teaches us that it was God's will to permit the invention of hadith and sunnah to serve as criteria for exposing those who believe only with their lips, not in their hearts. Those who are attracted to hadith and sunnah are proven to be false believers, 6:113. Ironically, the books of hadith report the Prophet's orders to write down nothing from him except the Quran. Shown below are 2 such hadiths, taken from the hadithists' most reliable sources, Sahih Muslim and Ishaq Ahmad ibn Hanbal. In 54:17, God said, "And we have certainly made the Quran easy to remember." So is there anyone who will be mindful? The interpretation of hadiths can be subjective, often leading to diverse understandings, unlike the Quran, which is considered divine and absolute. This variability and potential for misinterpretation further question the necessity of hadiths in understanding the Quran. But why do we need hadiths if we have the Quran, which we've established as complete? The Quran, as the Word of God, is a comprehensive guide for life. It encompasses principles of morality, justice, and guidance for personal and societal conduct. It provides a spiritual and ethical framework that doesn't necessitate the need for hadiths. God said in 45:6, "These are God's revelations that we recite to you with truth." So in which hadith other than God and his revelations do they believe? Or do you have some book in which you are studying? 68:37. And this is a blessed book which we brought down, so follow it and be reverent so that you may attain mercy. 155. This, Quran, is not a fabricated hadith, but an authentication of what came before it. A detailed account of all things and guidance and mercy for people who believe. 111. We brought the book down to you providing explanations of all things. 89. Shall I seek other than God as a lawmaker when it is he who has brought down to you the book fully detailed? 114. We did not leave anything out of the book. 638. The Quran is not a puzzle that needs external pieces to be complete. It stands whole and complete in itself, offering guidance to anyone who seeks it. The Quran is a complete guide in itself. So, what have we learned about the completeness of the Quran? We've delved deep into the very heart of the Quran, examining its own claims of completeness. We've seen in numerous verses, including but not limited to the first verse, that the Quran asserts its own totality. It assures us that it is a comprehensive guide for life, leaving no stone unturned. The Quran stands on its own, requiring no external sources to supplement its teachings. It is the Word of God, complete and absolute. The question is why all those scholars who made all this effort finding hadiths are weak or strong. Why did they not put the same effort in the Quran? Or do they know it and only want to mislead the people? They conceal, surely, but we must question everything. Allah repeats many times in the Quran, don't you think? To inspire us to think. The Quran itself affirms its completeness, making it a standalone guide for life. It is essential to understand and read the Quran and to believe is complete. Until next time, wake your brain. Please share this. Thank you.